Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Like a lot of people who fell in love with the album Little Earthquakes back in 1992, I've been proud to say I've been a fan of Tori Amos since the very beginning. But really, that's not entirely accurate because, as most fans also know, the real beginning of the celebrated singer-songwriter's career happened back in 1988. Back then, she was fronting a pseudo-synth-pop band called Kant Tori Read. The group's self-titled debut album was a complete failure at the time. And really, it's hardly even fair to call it a group. Most of the members ended up getting replaced throughout the band's short lifespan. Ultimately, this was a Tori Amos project, just not one that in any way resembled any of the music that was still to come. But for die-hard Tori fans, tracking down a copy of Why Can't Tori Read was like finding the Holy Grail. And back before the days of the World Wide Web or even Napster, your best bet to hear it was picking up a bootleg. That's what I ended up doing. I paid about $25 for a bootleg of the CD at a record show sometime in the mid-90s. Of course, it's been easily available online for probably 10 years now, so there's no reason that any Tori fan couldn't check it out if they were interested. I'd still love to have an original CD in my collection, but I'm not sure I'm willing to pay the price. But now, after being out of print for almost 30 years, Why Can't Tori Read has finally been officially released. A remastered edition of the album came out on streaming and digital download in September, and for fans that have long waited for the chance to add the album or CD to their collection, the day has finally come. Black Friday 2017 sees the limited edition Why Can't Tori Read finally available on independent record store shelves across the country. So in honor of finally getting to add a legitimate copy of Tori Amos's true debut album to my already large collection of Tori Amos CDs, I wanted to go ahead and review the album, talk about the music, and put it into a bit more context 30 years after its release. The album kicks off with a song that instantly takes you back to the late 80s. The Big Picture sounds like a song you'd hear over the opening credits of a lighthearted drama, probably starring Demi Moore or Michael J. Fox. In fact, if you listen close to the music and ignore Tori's voice, this sounds really similar to Harold Faltermeyer's theme from Fletch. Lyrically, the song is very 80s, very preoccupied with the stereotypical Gen X themes of the time, being young and ambitious, ready to make it big. But that's pretty far from the themes that we'd be seeing Tori explore on her solo albums. It's interesting that one of the most uncharacteristically Tori songs on the album would be the lead single. Years later, we know who Tori is, and we know that that's not what she's about. Looking back at Why Can't Tori Read, this song is a prime example of the sort of identity crisis that was taking place. The second single from the album was also the second track. Cool on Your Island is definitely an improvement over the opening track. Here we start to hear lyrics that are more in line with the Tori we'd get to know much better in the years that would follow. I'm not sure what to make of the tropical feeling of the track though, especially when the steel drums join in on the bridge. Tori is a versatile singer, but I don't think the island vibe is a good fit for her. On Faith, Tori takes on a sort of scat-style rapping for the verses that's almost comical in retrospect. I mean, back in '88, seeing the leather-clad dominatrix on the cover of this album and knowing nothing about the music that would come much later, maybe this would seem to make sense. Today, though, it's pretty cringeworthy in just about every way. But I have to give Tori credit here. She tackles those verses as earnestly as possible. And I do like a lot of elements in the music, though. There's some cool guitar work here, and I dig the funky bass line, too. With Fire on the Side, we get our first glimpse at the quote-unquote real Tori Amos. Her piano makes its first appearance here, and what a welcome appearance it is. This is easily one of the highlights on the album. Now, there's no denying that the production on this track dates it quite a bit, but the song itself is more timeless. With a different arrangement, this song could easily fit on a more recent Tori Amos album. From one of the best songs on the album, we move on to one of the weakest. It's not that Pirates is a bad song, it's just completely forgettable. There's just nothing interesting about this song whatsoever. The lyrics are bland, the vocal is unremarkable, and the music is uninspired. Total filler material. Floating City fares a bit better though. Here we get a more adventurous sound with ominous deep synths and pounding drums. The pulsating rhythm is mainly led by percussive chimes, which is a cool effect. In a lot of ways, this song actually reminds me of the sound that Depeche Mode was experimenting with a couple of years earlier on their Black Celebration album. For me, this is one of the best tracks on this album. It feels like what Why Can't Tori Read is supposed to feel like, while at the same time showing signs of the kind of songwriter Tori Amos was going to evolve into. This is one of the few songs on this album that I think holds up years later without feeling uncomfortably dated. Heart Attack at 23 is a really interesting track, if only for the opening. The song gives us a glimpse at Tori's piano skills, but only for about 45 seconds at the beginning of the song. After that, the song abruptly shifts into full rock mode, falling somewhere between Huey Lewis' Heart of Rock and Roll and Glenn Frey's The Heat Is On. We still get a few piano accents here and there, but ultimately this is a guitar rocker. That may be why this is one of the few songs on this album that Tori has never revisited in concert over the years, and that's probably for the best. Other than the piano intro, this is one of the least Tori-like songs on the album. On the Boundary dials things back a little, trading distortion for more shimmering guitars and synthesized background strings. From a songwriting perspective, this track actually sounds like it could have come from one of her early solo albums if it were rearranged to feature piano. As it is, there's no sign of her trademark keyboard skills here. Still, I think it's one of the better tracks on the album. Then on You Go to My Head, we get one of the noisier tracks on the album. The song is full of punchy bass, quirky little synth pops, and a cheesy 80s sax solo. But underneath it all, I think there's still some traces of good songwriting here. Again, with a different arrangement, I think this song could have found its way into the world as maybe a Little Earthquake's B-side. That being said, this is another track that Tori has never revisited in concert, so maybe she doesn't quite see the potential. The album wraps up with the nearly 7-minute-long ATN trilogy. Now, to be fair, calling this a trilogy is a bit generous, maybe even pretentious. The first section, called The Highlands, is a 1.5-minute-long instrumental passage highlighted by rising strings similar to the opening of Where the Streets Have No Name by U2. It's pretty enough, I guess, but as it blends into part 2 of the trilogy, there's no clear reason why these pieces should be connected. But you'll forgive that musical non sequitur almost immediately, because ATN finally gives Tori a chance to do what she does best. It seems almost fitting that this album would end with a beautiful piano ballad, sort of a sign of what was to come much later. Now, that was completely unplanned, of course, but in retrospect, it makes for a nice transition. And it would have been fine to end the album there, but this is a trilogy, so we still need part 3, which is a minute of superfluous bagpipe solo. And honestly, isn't about 90% of all bagpipes superfluous? In the end, I don't think it has ever been fair to say that Why Can't Tori Read was a bad album. But make no mistake, it's not a good album either. And that was kind of the problem. In 1988, this was a debut album, a new artist trying to make an impression on listeners and, maybe more importantly, radio programmers. There just wasn't enough of a fresh, new sound here to elevate the music above everything else that was out there at the time. And just a couple of years later, grunge music would explode and make the sound of Why Can't Tori Read utterly obsolete. On the other hand, how might this so-called band have fared if they'd come out in the mid-90s instead? In the wake of Alanis Morissette's huge success with Jagged Little Pill, there was a market for angry, empowered female rockers. Why Can't Tori Read might have fit in well with that emerging genre. So we're probably lucky that Tori Amos found herself and her sound when she did. When Little Earthquakes came out in 1992, it was the antithesis of grunge. And on top of that, it was an album that rejected the hypersexualized image of women in popular music. It would be part of a wave of singer-songwriters about to create a new genre. And even though Tori Amos never participated in Lilith Fair, I think it's fair to say that she helped lay the foundation upon which that movement was built. Now, that's not to say that if Why Can't Tori Read had not evolved into Tori Amos, we wouldn't have gotten Lilith Fair, but I do think that it's unlikely that Why Can't Tori Read, the band, would have developed a meaningful musical legacy as rich as what has come from Tori Amos, the solo artist. But at the same time, the world might not have discovered the music of Tori Amos had she not grown and evolved artistically from the failure and experience of Why Can't Tori Read. Little Earthquakes was a reinvention that required Tori Amos to emerge from a very different place. Today, I'm happy to see that she's embraced her genesis and is truly offering this music to her fans for the first time. So I'm giving Why Can't Tori Read an X rating of 5 out of 10. But that's for the music on its own. In terms of the album's importance in the evolution of Tori Amos, it may well be a 10. Once again, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. If you like what you see, please be sure to click the old thumbs up icon and be sure to check out these other Tori Amos videos right here on my channel. And of course, be sure to click subscribe because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.